Hello students, welcome back to the online classes. We have started actually the fifth chapter, that is reproduction in animals lesson. Okay, in this reproduction in animals lesson, first we'll go for a little bit glance at what all things we have studied already. Right. So in our last classes we have studied the definition of reproduction. Right, we have studied the definition of reproduction, and after that we have studied the types of reproduction, two types of reproduction. Right, then after those two types we have studied even about the gametes. Right, then fertilization. Right, then viviparous and oviparous animals. Yes, students. So just we'll have a glance of these all things in a few minutes. Then we'll go for today's class. Okay. So reproduction. It is a process of giving birth to the young ones of the same species. Is the definition of reproduction. Reproduction is a process of giving birth to the young ones of the same species. Okay. Then coming to the types of reproduction. There are how many types are there in reproduction? Two types are there in reproduction. The first one is sexual reproduction. Second one is asexual reproduction. Right? These are the two types of reproduction. The first one is sexual reproduction and second one is asexual reproduction. Why this is called as a sexual reproduction? Because here two gametes are involved, two parents are required, two gametes are involved. That's why I took the gametes as the next one. What are these gametes which are involved in the sexual reproduction? Okay, the gametes are nothing but these are the reproductive cells. The reproductive cells are called as gametes. Okay, which are having only n number of chromosomes. Which are having n number of chromosomes in it. One set of chromosomes we can say. I said you already that we are having around 20. We are having totally 23 pairs of chromosomes. Right. So out of those 23 pairs, this n number means only one set of chromosome is present in these reproductive cells. It may be the male reproductive cell, the male reproductive cell, that is sperm, or else it may be female reproductive cell, that is nothing but the ova. Right? So these two reproductive cells are having only one set of chromosome. One n number of chromosomes means one set of chromosomes. We are telling here it has pairs. Instead of pairs, it is having only one set. Which is having only one set, the reproductive cells, or else the gametes. Okay, when these two gametes fuses together, when male and female gametes fuses together, which is called as the next step, that is fertilization. Right? Fertilization is nothing but fusion of male and female gametes. Right? The male and female gametes fuses together to form a fertilized egg, or else the process is called as fertilization. Fine. So next one, whether in all the organisms, all the living organisms, the process of reproduction takes place in this way only, that is by fusion of the reproductive cells and by development of that fertilized egg into a young one inside the womb of the mother. It's not necessary, right? All the organisms are not going to give birth to the young ones directly. Some organisms are going to lay the eggs also. So that is a different kind of reproduction. That's why we are dividing the organisms, living organisms, again into two types, depending upon whether it is laying the egg, that is the fertilized egg, or else unfertilized egg, and it is giving birth directly to the young ones, any one. So if they are giving birth, if the animals which are giving birth to the young ones directly, then they are called as viviparous animals. Viviparous animals are the one which are going to give birth to the young ones directly. Right. So completely growth and developmental stages will take place inside the womb of the mother or female body. Right, in the viviparous animals. Then what is oviparous animals? These are the living organisms which are going to lay the egg. That egg is going to be fertilized and then incubated, and the young one is going to be hatched out from that. That is called as a kind of oviparous animals. These are the types of the oviparous animals. So can you give some of the examples for viviparous animals? Viviparous is nothing but the animals which are going to give birth to the young ones of their own kind. We can give many examples of this viviparous. That is dogs, cat, right? Cows, human being. Coming to the oviparous animals. Oviparous animals, that is the egg-laying animals. Nothing but the hens, right? Ostrich. Many varieties of the birds we can take here. Birds which are going to lay the egg, they are going to incubate the egg, and then the young one is going to be hatched out from that incubated egg. Right? So those comes under oviparous animals. Right. So the next part is yeah, students. We have studied that gametes, that is, these are the reproductive cells. These are the reproductive cells, and there are two types are there, I said it just now. That is male and female. Male gamete and female gamete. Right? So here, the male gamete is nothing but the sperm, which is a unicellular having haploid set of chromosomes. Right? Female gamete, which is again a unicellular and having haploid set of chromosomes. That is nothing but the ova. Okay, when these two, that is the female gamete, the ova, male gamete, that is the sperms, when fuses together, forms the zygote. Forms the zygote. Right? Here I said you these are unicellular in nature. The ova and the sperm are unicellular in nature. When these two fuses together to form the zygote, this zygote is again unicellular in nature. Right. This zygote undergoes further division and forms the embryo. Right. This zygote further undergoes the cleavages or division and forms the embryo. And this embryo undergoes still developmental stages and attain the next stage, that is nothing but fetus. Right? That is the fetus. So what is exactly fetus? How can we identify the fetus? Fetus is nothing but the embryo which has undergone growth stage and the body parts. And all the body parts are easily identifiable, is called as fetus. Right? This is actually the differences between embryo and the fetus. Embryo, we cannot identify any body parts, internal or else the external body parts are not identifiable in the embryo. But when that embryo undergoes the developmental stages and attain the fetal stage, that is nothing but we can easily identify all the body parts, internal as well as external body parts are easily identifiable. That's why it is called as now fetus. these all are the developmental stages which happen or undergo inside the womb of the mother. Right. So the next part. Yes, students, we have studied the male and female reproductive systems, right? Just once go through the female reproductive system. Female reproductive system. I think you remember the diagram still. This is the ovary, right? Fallopian tube, and this is the uterus part. Right? These are the three parts of female reproductive system. Okay. Why I have drawn again the same diagram? Already this is explained in the last class. Because to understand very well about the next part of the lesson, that is IVF, you should know again the female reproductive system and its different parts. Why they go for the IVF process? Okay, and what is exactly the IVF means? So it is nothing but in vitro fertilization. IVF is nothing but in vitro fertilization. Right. So what exactly things are happening in this IVF process? IVF process, usually the couples, when they go for this process, is whether either the fallopian tube malfunctioning or else the uterus malfunctioning. That time they'll go for the alternate process of reproduction, that is by IVF process. So here what thing will happen in this IVF process is they'll just collect the gametes of both the parents, that is ova is collected from the mother and the sperms are collected from the father again, right? And these two gametes are allowed to fuse together outside the body of the female. These two gametes are allowed to fuse under laboratory conditions, and when zygote forms, they'll allow that zygote to grow in the laboratory condition only for around 1 week, right? If it starts developing properly, then that developing or dividing zygote, which is called as an embryo now, is going to be transplanted in the uterus of the same mother from which we have taken the ova, right? So this is actually the IVF, where we are going to extract the gametes from both the parents, allow to fuse those gametes under laboratory condition, and allow around 1 week for that, that zygote has to undergo cleavage process, developmental stages, or else dividing and redividing itself. That divided zygote is now allowed to implant inside the uterus of the same mother. This is actually the process of IVF. One more thing, this to the same mother from whom we have taken the ova, we are going to implant that zygote again back to the uterus of the same mother, I said. This is when her uterus, if it is functioning properly, then, right? Only problem with respect to the fallopian tube, then we can go this process. If at all her uterus is not fit to intake or allow the growth of the embryo inside the uterus, then again we have to go for a next process, that is nothing but surrogate mother. That is nothing but surrogate mother. We have to transplant that embryo into the another female. another female uterus, so that she is going to give birth to these parents' baby. Only we are transplanting the embryo into another female, which now she is called as a surrogate mother. Okay, so this is actually IVF, in vitro fertilization process. Yes, students. Till now we have studied completely about the sexual reproductions and the IVF process. Right? In sexual reproduction, the role of gametes, the process of fertilization, the process of formation of embryo, fetus, we have studied, right? So the next type of the reproduction, that is the asexual reproduction. This is the second type of reproduction, that is asexual reproduction. Yeah. So here the name itself is indicating here gametes are not involved. Gametes are not involved or not required. Right? We can say gametes are not required. Right? And another main feature of this asexual reproduction is single parent is involved. Single parent is involved. Right? So here, what is exactly this asexual reproduction means? Without the involvement or requirement of the gametes, if a particular organism is going to reproduce without forming the gamete, that's called as asexual reproduction. Right? We'll study this asexual reproduction by taking two examples. The first example is budding in hydra. Budding in hydra. Okay, this is the process of asexual reproduction, takes place in hydra. This is the hydra, an aquatic organism. Okay, this hydra, during its reproduction stage, it starts developing slowly a bud at the trunk part of it. See, you can notice over here. Slowly a small bud develops. Right? And this bud undergoes growth stage and becomes very bigger. Right? And still more bigger it will become, and it resembles now to that of the parent. Right? This bud which was growing upon the body of this parent hydra, now resembling as that of the parent. Right? At this stage we can say that this growing hydra is now completes its developmental stages. So now what will happen? It detaches itself from the parent body. The growing hydra now detaches itself from the parent's body. Okay. Drawing the diagram according to the sentences what I am explaining you. Yes, it has detached itself now from the parent's body. So now it starts attach itself to the substratum. Substratum means the stones, the rocks which are present at the base part of the aquatic body, any like river or ocean. So it has attached itself and now starts or undergoes the developmental stages. Now starts developing. Right? And when it attains its reproductive stages, that time again it starts producing the bud. The bud slowly grows and forms or starts resembling as that of the parent and detaches itself from the parent body and grows individually. This is actually the process of budding which takes place in hydra. Right. So now second example. Second example of asexual reproduction, that is binary fission. Binary fission. I think you remember your 7th standard biology students. Binary fission we have studied in short with respect to the amoeba especially, right? Binary fission in amoeba. Right? Amoeba is a organism which is usually found in the pond waters. Right? It is a unicellular organism which undergoes reproduction by the process of binary fission. By the process of binary fission. So what is this binary fission now? You all know, I think, the structure of the amoeba, which is completely irregular in shape, with a nucleus and cytoplasm. All other organelles of the cell are present as that of the animal cell, right? And it is having a pseudopodia. This is the nucleus, right? What are pseudopodia, which is also called as a false feet? False feet are going to helpful to trap the food material and also to move that amoeba from one place to another place. So we are calling that as a pseudopodia, which is a completely an extended or protruded part from the body. Right? The external outgrowth which we can observe easily, that is nothing but the pseudopodia or false feet of the amoeba. So this amoeba, how it undergoes binary fission? So when binary fission starts, the amoeba starts making the fissions over here like this. You just take it an example of a balloon, okay, which is half filled with air. Don't fill it tightly with the air, half filled or less than half filled. Okay, then just make it, try to make it 2 halves just by pressing it. How it will become? That is nothing but the fission. That is nothing but the fission. Over here also, this amoeba starts dividing itself by making the fissions like this, right? And that fission will again increase, and along with the nucleus it starts dividing. See, 2 nucleus have formed because of that fission, and 2 different cells of amoeba are also formed. These are called as daughter cells. Exactly the things what happens in the binary fission. Just go through all the diagrams here now. So this is the first step. That is, it is just a parent amoeba. Okay. Now the next step. I said fission starts here. Nucleus is still as it is, but slowly the fission has started. Okay. In the next step, along with the cell, nucleus also starts dividing, right? Along with the amoeba outer cell and cytoplasm, nucleus also starts dividing equally in both the cells, in both the daughter cells. Now in the next one, 2 daughter cells have formed, right? This is actually called as binary fission, which is observed in amoeba, right? So the 2 sexual reproduction methods are, the first one budding in hydra and the second one is binary fission in amoeba. Okay. See students, here also some other organisms are there which are going to reproduce through the asexual reproduction process, right? So what are those? All the fungi are there. I think you know already about the spores, which I have explained in my last classes also during microorganism lesson, and even about the spores we have studied in our 7th standard reproduction in plants lesson also. Okay, spore formation. The fungus is going to reproduce by forming the spores, which is also coming under asexual reproduction. Okay. Then other than that, budding in yeast. This also we have studied in our 7th standard. I think you remember still. The yeast is going to form slowly the buds. Maybe 2 or 3 buds are at a time are going to develop upon the parent body. Then they are going to detach itself from the parent and grows individually. This is another example of budding process, budding type of asexual reproduction. Along with the hydra, even we can give the example of yeast also. Right? So, just remember these diagrams. If it is asked in the examination, better draw the diagram, label the parts and explain. Okay. So, next process. Next process, that is our next part of the lesson. We have studied now complete information about the sexual and asexual reproduction. Then just differentiate them. Sexual reproduction and asexual reproduction. Start differentiating them. Okay, the first one. In the sexual reproduction, we have studied that gametes are involved. Right? And in the sexual reproduction, gametes are not involved. Gametes are not involved. Right? Then second one, 2 parents are required. Right? 2 parents are involved in sexual reproduction, and in the sexual reproduction, single parent is involved. Right? Single parent is involved. Right? Then coming to the third point in sexual reproduction, offspring is not necessarily the exact copy of the parent. Offspring in the sexual reproduction may not be exact copy of the parent, but in the asexual reproduction, offspring is exactly a similar copy of the parent. Right? Offspring is not completely similar. Maybe some of the traits are matching to the parents, but not completely similar as that of the parent. Okay, offspring is not completely similar to the parent. Right? But third point in the sexual reproduction is offspring is completely similar. Offspring is completely similar to the parent. Right? So these are the differences between the sexual and asexual reproduction. Fourth point, as a difference, we can even give some of the examples. Right? Some of the examples we can give as a fourth point over here. Sexual reproduction, we can give examples of dog, human, cat. Right? Then in the asexual reproduction, you can give examples of yeast, then hydra, amoeba, etc. So students, just remember these differences between sexual reproduction and asexual reproduction. It's a very important question usually asked in the examination for 3 marks. Right? If the differences along with the examples and along with the diagrams, if they ask, maybe the same question will be for 5 marks also. Like explain the process of sexual reproduction and asexual reproduction with the diagrams. If we asked, then it will be for 5 marks. So be careful, study well, remember these all things. Okay. And in my next class, I'll explain you about the next part of the reproduction in animals lesson, that is about the cloning process, and about the cloning in Dolly I'll explain you in the next class. Thank you.